Hi, I'm Paul Cerruto. I'm a second sergeant in the 19th Connecticut Volunteer Infantry, based here in lovely old Litchfield, Connecticut. Today we're very, very honored to be in the same spot as the old 19th 150 years ago stood and received a brand new set of colors. That's our new flag, which is over here. Okay. And we were able, from the kindness of Mrs. Wolf, Linda Wolf, who lives on Camp Dutton, to let us camp in the original field, which that was the first time people in blue camped in that field for 150 years. In our unit, we have about 30 people, soldiers, but our unit is special because we allow civilians and our wives dress and play civilian roles. A lot of reenactment units only have soldiers. We have both ways. 14 years, I've always had a love for the Civil War. When I was a child, growing up in Bantam, my father was a window cleaner. We didn't have a lot of money. It was in 1963, the 100-year centennial, and my twin brother and I could buy a marked Civil War set and split it. He was Confederate, I was Union. We were happy, my parents were happy. It was a cheap gift, and that's how I got interested in the Civil War.
Just a farmer from Bantam. But like you, we're all here to honor our troops as they go off to war tomorrow morning. Whether he be a brother, a cousin, a fiance, a boyfriend, or a husband, or such in my case, a son. My son, right there, Lewis, signed up after a year of me trying to persuade him not to. Just goes to show you what a boy will do to get out of barn chores. I'd like to introduce the first selectman of the town of Litchfield, Isaac Moore.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out today. I'm here to just address my fellow countrymen on behalf of the town of Litchfield. Board of Selectmen. I'm proud to be here to address you today. I'm honored to be here. These soldiers from throughout Litchfield County have trained at Camp Dutton here in Litchfield. I'd like to take a minute to honor Lieutenant Henry Dutton, who was killed in war, and this camp has been dedicated after. The men are an honor to his memories to be there at that camp.
Governor and Mrs. Buckingham, Selectman Morris, Mrs. Noyes, members of the community, but most of all, these brave men and their officers, welcome. This is not perhaps a great day in that when you send men off to fight, you must also remember that perhaps some of them will not return. So I would not call it a glorious day, for some of us will weep, for they will not return. And yet we're gathered here on this green, a green very much like many of the greens throughout New England, that in the last war, those men gathered there to secure their freedom, to maintain their freedom, and to set up this country. After which we formed a Constitution and we became the United States. So we are gathered here today to protect those freedoms. You must remember, it is not we who ran from the Constitution saying, I have the right to do as I wish. You are part of a nation. We are not the people who fired upon a fort belonging to the federal government, but we are the people who will defend it and gain it back. We are gathered here to present this valiant 19th Connecticut Volunteers with their new colors. And I must say that it is a pleasure to present this in honor of my wife, Julia Talmadge Noyes, and a group of ladies. And you will recall that name, Talmadge. As I mentioned earlier, from the Revolution, Major Talmadge. He is a part of Litchfield, as are we now. And on her behalf and the others of that group, we wish to present to this regiment their new colors.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and officers and men of the 19th Volunteer Infantry. You were among the first to come forward when I called once more to rally to the support of our government, to be used in suppressing the rebellion. Our troops may be held in check, and our sons die on the battlefields, but the cause of civil liberty must be advanced. The supremacy of government must be maintained. Prompt and decisive action will be economy in men, money. By any delay, the safety of our armies, even of the nation, may be in peril.
It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. I can't give enough thanks to my friend Paul Ceruto for doing this. It's awesome. Continuing with the history of the 2nd Connecticut. I'll be as brief as I can because the history is long. I'll start with from the beginning. In 1862, in the second year of the War of the Rebellion, President Lincoln calls for another 3,000 volunteers on July 1st. On July 22nd, our Governor Buckingham, calls for regiments to be organized in Connecticut. 8 regiments answer the call. One of those regiments in particular was the 19th Volunteer Regiment from Litchfield County, also known as the County Regiment.
Promote my book that is for the stopping of the scourge of slavery, Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was written in 1852 to make sure that the whole world knew how evil slavery was and that it should be definitely taken away from the scourge of today's world. She wrote the book because she had actually met a slave that had been working in her home as a cook when they were first married, Calvin and she herself. They had 2 twin daughters. They hired a free black who they thought was free, but unbeknownst to them, she was being apprehended or hunted down by slave catchers. And upon hearing that, her husband Calvin and her brother Henry Ward secreted her off in the middle of the night with revolvers holstered in their pockets and in their gun belts, and took her in a wagon to an Underground Railroad conductor to conduct her on the way to Canada, where she eventually did find freedom. But that was the closest that Harriet ever got to seeing, having an actual slave in her household. And that really left an impression on her, to see the terror in that woman's eyes.